I should just have you do it. See, way more photogenic.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm glad you were able to join us today. Quick couple things. There are 3 restrooms out of the main hall here. There's a handicapped restroom here to the right, and there's 2 others either side of the stairway. The exits, if there's some emergency, you kind of go down and you can actually exit through the big main doors, or the way you came in through the door with the flag. It's down here to the left and then a right down the stairs. We want to make sure everybody's welcome to look around the building after the talk, and if you have questions, Ernie, Paul, myself, or a few others around here that can help answer any questions you might have. This is the Alpha Bird Nature Club on the President Day Small, and we are a totally independent group. We don't get any big funding from anywhere, so it's a membership-based program. So we have about 250 memberships going into the end. We started our year September 1st, so everybody that is a member will get a renewal letter later this month, and we appreciate the support, and it really it's been going well. We have received a couple of grants from the Cultural Council. If you notice the labels on the plants outside, that was from a grant from the Athol Cultural Council. Christy Dorn did the artwork, and Lyman Signs up at Phillipston did the actual printing. We think they came out pretty well, and we're planning to do a whole bunch more in the next season. So for that, it's also our 60th year we'll be embarking upon. So we're working on a video that interviews people from different parts of the history of the club. It was formed by our 8th grade science teacher, Bob Coyle, back in '63. And a lot of the specimens and stuff were actually roadkill and other window kill stuff that you would bring into the classroom and would pitch in nickels, dimes, and quarters and get them mounted. Back then it didn't cost us $700 to get something mounted. But anyway, so a lot of the stuff goes back to that period. And we have some additional things that are donations from various libraries and other places, like the Edward Howe Forbush collection, which the loon is part of that, and there's a couple things in the other room. Come on in. How are we doing? Yeah. So anyway, so all this is going on, and we've had some really good support from the town. They actually did, help pay for this lift that is working out, and a few other things. We just had an oil tank removed out back, which the town, kicked in $15,000 to do that. So I mean, we do have good support from the community. So if you want to know more about the club, here it all is. We have pamphlets around the hallway and on the wall, and feel free. So with that, I'd just like to go ahead and get with our program for the afternoon. We're very pleased to have Randy Stone join us again. Randy and I go back a ways. We worked at DCR together in the forestry department, and we're both retired at this point, which is a good thing. And so anyway, and Randy leads the Pioneer Valley Fern Society and does walks and lectures throughout the season on ferns around the valley and elsewhere. So without any further ado, Randy Stone. Thanks, Dave.
Well, when Dave pointed out that we're going to be recorded here audibly and visually, I suggested to my wife that she just takes over and does it because she's way more photogenic than I am, but she declined, so I get some stuff with me. So just another little word about how I got interested in ferns. Dave mentioned that I was a forester at Bob, and I started my career back in 1970 in Connecticut. And I was fortunate to work for someone that encouraged me to look at the natural world around me and all of the plant communities, and not just the trees. And I was fortunate to grow up in a family that encouraged me to enjoy the natural world too. So it's been a long journey. I've figured out a few things, but every day I learn a little more. So today, what I want to do is just introduce you to a few of the most common ferns. I've got a little slideshow here with slides on actually 11. I call it the top 10, but there's 11 most common ferns, and I have a slide for each one and describe them. And then after that, boy, I wish I had that remote, but I don't. I'm gonna have to come over here and scroll up and down. You find it? I guess it's not on slideshow. Oh, it should be. Wow. Well, that's good. Technical difficulties. I think. Oh, wonderful. Well, that is something. Yeah.
Yep.
So wonderful. Just on the touchpad.
I think I just hit the touchdown.
Oh, now it's working. Okay, so first part is this introduction to the ferns. And then afterwards, I put in a few slides, just ferns in the design landscape, ferns in our environment. And a few nice places, many of them relatively local. So before I just start in on the identification process, how to get started. Let me just say that one of the things that interested me about ferns was that working outside, they seem to be everywhere. So that was one reason I got interested in them. And then a lot of them are really pretty. They're just nice to look at, you know, like flowers or birds or butterflies or open. And the other thing is that they have a really ancient lineage. They go back 350 million years. They're among the first group of plants to have a vascular system so they could get tall and get above the algae and the bacteria and the lichens and the mosses. So 3 neat reasons for enjoying ferns. So how do we get started here? Where do you go? And, you know, I sometimes get stuck on the dichotomous keys. Sometimes it's hard to decide, you know, which one of the 2 choices to take. So I realized that first of all, I want to decide whether I'm in generalist habitat or whether I'm in some specialized habitat, a wetland, for instance, or a dry, sunny rock face. And then I want to look at some macro features, things like size, shape, color, texture, arrangement, all of the things that we normally use to identify things in our own personal environments. Like I can recognize Dave down the end of the parking lot, or I see a 57 Chevy go by and oh wow, 57 Bel Air. So it's all of these things that we are internalized. And I realized that that's how we identify trees from a distance in the woods. We don't have time to climb up and look at a bud scale or anything like that. So it's these macro features. So I decided to concentrate on macro features for ferns. And if you have to go to a key, these are the things that are helpful if you have to go to a key. So the first thing is size, and then the shape and arrangement of the plant. How many times the leaf is divided, where the spores are located, and what the base of the stem looks like. That's called the style. So some ferns are actually almost minuscule. The little one on the left there is a triangle moonwort. You can see it's just right in my fingers. It's maybe an inch. That's all it really is. This little one here. A lot of them are kind of medium sized, sort of knee high, and some of them get pretty big, chest high or head high. So ferns grow in a number of different arrangements. Lots of them, like the cinnamon fern, they grow in these symmetric clumps. So Some of them grow in kind of an asymmetric form or in masses of individual stems. These are all things that you can visually see and understand even from a distance without scrutinizing them. And then how the leaves are divided. A lot of ferns, except for this one, which doesn't have any leaflets at all, just a single leaf. Most of them are divided once, twice, or 3 times into leaflets and subleaflets and sub-subleaflets. Some of them have these unique shapes, like the maidenhair fern that's out in the garden here, sort of a fan shape, a round thing that doesn't look like a regular fern leaf that's triangular. This little moonwort is just a clubby little thing, doesn't really look like a fern at all. And here's a climbing fern. It has these 5 or 6 little fingers, and it's a vine. The other thing that's easy to see is looking at where the spores are located. So on a lot of ferns, if you turn the leaf over, the spores are in these little dots, like there, those little round dots. And on some fern species, some of the leaves are fertile and some of them are sterile. Sometimes, like on this polypody, the fertile leaflets look just like sterile leaflets that don't have the dots. Sometimes they're slightly different, like this Christmas fern, where just the tip has fertile leaflets. And other ferns, they're completely different. The sterile leaf looks like the typical fern leaf, and the fertile part is a completely different modified fertile leaf. This is sensitive fern, and it's got that little spike with the beads on it. And we'll get into that a little more in just a second. And then how these fruit dots or spori are arranged and what they really look like. So some of them are big round circles. Some of them, this is lady fern, some of them are in little J shapes or linear shapes in a herringbone pattern. Some of them are very different. They're located on the edge of the leaf. This is maidenhair fern, and then the edge of the leaf curls over to protect them. And this is a New York fern with little round, actually little kidney-shaped round sori. This is that walking fern with just kind of a random arrangement of linear shapes. This is a wood fern with typical little round dots. And this is a chain fern, Virginia chain fern. And they're arranged kind of like sausage links or hot dog links in a chain pattern all the way around the leaf. And then the last thing we want to look at is the stem or the stike. The stike is the section of the stem from the ground up to the first set of leaflets. And some of them, like this one, are smooth. Some of them, like this one, have lots of hairs. And some of them, like all of the wood ferns, have these large brown papery scales. So those are the 5 things that you need to look at. Start with the location and then look at these physical characteristics and then use a PowerPoint like this one that's located on our website, Pioneer Valley Fern Society, and always a fern guide to help you out. Well, let's go right on to my top 10. I put this together, of course, you know, I'm at the age where I was around to watch Dave Letterman, and every night he did a top 10. So I put a top 10 list, and actually there's 11, but sometimes you see one or the other of these, sometimes both. So we'll start out with this interrupted fern, and we'll go right to the location on all of these, and then a search image, which are these macro features that I just mentioned, and then other additional diagnostics if necessary. So this one is a really common generalist. It grows almost everywhere. As long as there's a little bit of moisture, grows from almost full sun to full shade. It's a fairly large fern. It can get chest high, 30 or more inches in height. And its leaf is twice cut. So here's the whole leaf, and here's a leaflet, and those leaflets are cut again into subleaflets. So it's cut twice. The interesting thing about it too is that when there are fertile leaves, fertile fronds, they're interrupted with these modified small fertile leaflets right in the middle of the leaf. You can see them here. So these are sterile, these are fertile. Sometimes there aren't any fertile ones, and the idea is a little more difficult, but I'll talk about that in just a second. And then one of the other things I mentioned, how ferns come from a group of plants, the lycopids really, that were the first ones to develop a vascular system. So that's the thing, like the phloem and the xylem in trees, where the nutrients go up and down and transported throughout the plant. Ferns have a vascular system, and the little vascular bundles come in different shapes for a variety of ferns. So all of these in this Osmunda group have a vascular bundle shape that's a horseshoe or a U shape with little curlicues on the ends. So sometimes one individual fern leaf can look a lot like another individual fern leaf from a different kind of fern. And just looking at the vascular bundle can sometimes be really helpful. It's one of the things that helped me out years and years ago. The next one in the same group is cinnamon fern. Now, the last one was Osmunda. This one's Osmundastrum, and these keep changing a lot. So the ferns have always been a group of plants that have kept taxonomists busy and happy, and still are. We just got a new edition of a book, 2023 edition of a book. The last one was 2012, and the names were all different just in 10 years. So the names keep changing as the taxonomists and the botanists are able to decode the genome. So the phylogeny, the evolutionary tree keeps changing and getting refined year by year. So cinnamon fern, just like the last one, but its location is more wetland, facultative, a wetland plant. So it's more apt to grow in a wetland plant community than it is upland. It's about the same size. It's in this nice circular symmetric clump, and it has a modified fertile leaf too, which comes up early in the spring. There are these little cinnamon sticks, and they're modified leaves, and that's where the spores are located. So all of these fern leaf shapes that we recognize as a regular fern leaf, they're sterile, and these are the only fertile ones. Now, I mentioned there's the way to tell them apart when there aren't any fertile leaves is cinnamon fern has little woolly tufts in the, turn the leaf over, in the axils of all of the little leaflets. There's a little woolly tuft. And the last one, interrupt fern, doesn't have that. Even in the fiddleheads that are just starting to expand, you see those little woolly tufts. They're white at this point, but then they become kind of cinnamon color. Another fern, a common one that you see in the wetland environment, is the sensitive fern. It's smaller. It doesn't grow in a circular clump. It grows as individual stems, sometimes in masses, sometimes not, just one at a time. And it's got it's got a leaf that has a wavy or scallop edge like this. So it's once cut, but sometimes some of the scalloped edges are so deep that it really looks like twice cut. So I put a little asterisk there, once cut, because some of them sure look twice cut to me, but technically they're only once cut. The other neat thing is that on the back side, if you look at a leaflet, instead of having just straight veins like a lot of leaves do, these are net-like. Very curious, and very interesting. And of course, it has a fertile leaf that's very, very different, just that bead-like spike. So all of these leaves, they're all sterile. And when you see these bead-like spikes, those are the modified leaves that are fertile. So this green one is a current one from this year. And those darker brown ones are dried and desiccated, and they will persist for a couple of years. So the next couple of ferns are wood ferns. And the first one I'm going to talk about is marginal wood fern. And it's a generalist, and it grows roadsides, stone walls, in stone foundations, on rocky hillsides, or even in stone faces of stone walls and cliffs. It's pretty common. It is evergreen. It grows in these really nice circular symmetric clumps. It's kind of medium sized, sort of knee high most of the time. And one of the other features that's really prominent is lots and lots of papery brown scales. It's got really dark, almost leathery foliage. So it's that dark gray green color. And the fruit dots, or the sori, are these round things. They're pretty large and prominent, and they're right at the edges or the margins of the leaflet, hence its name. The vascular bundles on all of these diophorus fronts are a series of little circles, of different sized little circles all the way around the circumference of the stem. Another wood fern that's really common is evergreen wood fern, and it is evergreen. It's about the same size and shape as the last one, but it's frillier looking. It grows almost in the same places. It's really common. We see it on almost every time we go out. And it's thrice cut, so it's lacy. The last one, put back there. It's just once cut. So here's the leaflet, and these, oh, my pointer's going away. It's just, this one's twice cut, and the next one. Oh, well. Next one is thrice cut, so it's a lacy look. And it has little round fruit dots or sori, and they're in the middle of the leaflet, not at the edges or at the margins. It's got the same scaly stud, and it is evergreen. It has the same vascular bundle shape, the series of little circles or dots around the circumference of the stem. It's very common generally. Another generalist is Christmas tree. So grows in the woods, grows along roadsides, grows in stone walls, grows in foundations, dry to moist, sunny to shade. It's rather small. It's small to medium sized. Usually it doesn't get much above knee high. It It has a leaf that is somewhat, the fertile leaf is somewhat different than the sterile leaf. Just the tip is narrowed and elongated, and that's where the spores are. So that's a sterile one. That's a fertile one with the spores. It's got dark green glossy foliage. The leaves are only once cut. And each of these little leaflets has a little ear on it. Just a little ear there. And some people say it looks like Santa's sleigh, or if you turn it this way, it looks like a stocking. But basically, it was used for Yuletide wreaths and sprays. It's another evergreen one. And that's why it's called Christmas one. The fiddle head here is really pretty. It's a silvery, hair covered little shape that looks like a nautilus shell to me. Another generalist is New York fern. This one grows almost everywhere. Woods, roadsides, anywhere there's moderate moisture. In a perfect world, I would look for it mid-slope in a sunny little spot in the woods.
This is Northern Lady Farm.
I'm sorry?
It says Northern Lady Farm. You said New York Farm?
Oh, Angustum. It used to be Felix Femino.
Okay.
And I mentioned how ferns are a delight to taxonomists. So this one has actually been changed to Northern Lady Fern,
Okay.
and it's called Angustum. The Felix Femina is now Southern Lady Fern. We don't really have it here. The eastern part of the state along the coast and down south. So it's a recent change.
So is there a New York fern then?
What's that, Ben?
Is there a New York fern then, or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Another slide.
What was that?
You said New York, but it's
Oh.
late.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
my error. Yes.
And is the one at the bottom, a red lady fern because of red.
Yeah, so some of these have these red stones. It's just a color phase. It's like the gray squirrel and the white and the black color phase of the gray squirrel. It used to be considered a variety, but it's the same species, just a color difference. They're often found in garden centers or nurseries under a name like Lady in Red. A real generalist. You see it almost everywhere, from wet to dry. The fertile leaves and the sterile leaves are exactly the same. It's just that some of them have the spores and some of them don't. The fruit dots are in these little linear or J-shaped dots arranged in a herringbone pattern. Very pretty. It's got scales that are to me, they look like freshly ground coarse black pepper. You can see them from a distance and, oh, that's lady fern, coarsely ground black pepper. It's got a cute little whimsical seahorse or elephant shaped fiddlehead. And it's got a different kind of vascular bundle. Again, this is one that is confusing because it looks like some of the other ones. If you just took one leaf, it would look like evergreen wood fern, for instance. But it has a vascular bundle that with two little back-to-back parentheses. This next one is New York fern. And again, has an asterisk because the taxonomists have been playing around with the nomenclature for this one too. This is a generalist that grows in a lot of different places. It often grows in masses, and the foliage is this yellow green color. The prominent feature is that the leaflets get tinier and tinier and tinier and tinier as they get down to the ground. So if you see that, you almost don't need to look at anything else. The small to medium sized dainty fern with the descending leaflets get tinier and tinier. That's New York fern. It's almost nothing else that looks like it. It has nice little round sori. And one of the other things that it's is that the fertile fronds are just slightly taller and slightly narrower in proportion than the sterile ones. Other than that, they look pretty much the same. Another common one, it looks a bit like New York fern and lady fern and some of the other ones, looks just typical triangular fern leaf. Grows in dry, open places, often places that have been disturbed, roadsides, ditches, fields. This is haycented fern. It's often considered a native invasive because it can colonize an area after disturbance very quickly. It grows in single stems, but in dense masses. And sometimes the masses are so dense that it's difficult for natural vegetation to reproduce. Even tree species are hard to regenerate if there's dense masses of hay-scented fern. It's got thrice cut leaves, so it's kind of lacy looking. It has glandular hairs up and down the stems, so that if you grab a bunch of them and run your hands through them, your hands feel sticky, like resinous. You can see the hairs on this little field back here. You can see them. I think you can probably see them there on that stem. And it has another different kind of vascular bundle shape. This one looks like just a perfect little smiley face. It's very cute. The stem is really dark brown and shiny at the base, and then it gradually gets a little lighter and hairier as it gets on up. Number 10 is bracken. This is an interesting one. It also colonizes disturbed sites. So it has this deeply buried, rather thick rhizome, root system that protects it from surface disturbances. So in fact, it's really a fire species. It successfully regenerates like after light burns. These rhizomes quickly produce vegetative leaves after a disturbance. And the other thing that's neat about this one is that it grows all the way around the world, the same species. The only continent that it doesn't grow in is Antarctica. Contains these chemicals called glucosides, which are poisonous to a lot of livestock. It's a real problem in Britain where sheep farming is still very important. It can make animals sick or even kill them. So eradicating this in pastures is important in some places. It has a really distinctive three-part leaf, and it can get fairly tall. It can become a really tall, large fern, chest high. I mentioned that these rhizomes can quickly vegetatively reproduce. And in fact, it's so successful at vegetative reproduction that it almost never produces fertile leaflets. So when it does, and I'm always excited to find it, the fertile part is this continuous line all the way around the leaflet. It's not a series of dots or linear sori. It's just a continuous line all the way around. Very pretty, but you hardly ever see it. And the last of the common ones is polypodium. So this is one that grows usually on the tops of boulders, rarely in the soil around here. You see it sometimes where it's very dry, sometimes on the top of a little cliff, sometimes right in the sun. It's evergreen, so you see it in the winter, encased in snow and ice. The leaves curl like rhododendron leaves do when it gets very cold. And it's quite pretty, grows in these masses of individual stems. It's only once cut, kind of like Christmas fern. It's got really prominent fruit dots on the backside of the leaves. The fertile leaves and the sterile leaves look exactly the same. It's just that the fertile leaves have these dots and the sterile ones don't. And they're so big and prominent that they leave an impression on the top side. You can see an impression of them on the top of the leaf. There's another common species of it called Appalachian polypodium. And there are a lot of hybrids in between, but the Appalachian, it's a little wider. The leaflets are a little pointier and a little narrower. A lot of hybridization. The neat thing about these is they grow in places where other ferns often don't grow. They grow in colonies almost always by themselves. And on the tops of rocks without any much of a soil substrate at all, other than dried leaves, maybe some moss. Down south, they'll grow on the ground more, but we rarely see them on the ground here. So that's the end of the common fern identification part of this. The next thing I'm going to do is go on to a little visual tour of ferns in the landscape. The first place we're going to look at is New England Botanic Garden, Tower Hill in Boylston. Many of you may have been there. If you haven't, I encourage you to go. It's a beautiful place. I don't think we've been there since the pandemic, but I understand that they've done a lot more work with their ferns in the last few years, and I'll try to get there this year again. It's a beautifully landscaped, large parcel of land with lots and lots of different kinds of plantings, not just ferns, but they do a good job with the ferns and ferns that are suited to this kind of environment, they will put in the right place. Well, a close up from that wall there where the fountain was, little maidenhair spleenworts right in the crevice of the rock. They also do a lot of ferns and lands in the foundation plantings around the buildings. There's that, I think you may have some of this Japanese painted fern out in the garden. It's related to, it's an ethereum like lady fern. Very pretty because it has that bronze color, so you can match colors on the landscape. Another neat one that they've planted in rock walls is this is Hart's-tongue fern. It's a spleenwort, and around here it only grows in one little location outside of Syracuse, New York, but it grows in Ontario and I think in some of the Maritimes. Another nice place to visit is the Berkshire Botanical Garden. It's in West Stafford. It's not too far from the Rockwell Museum. If you get out that way, stop by. They have a really nice nice garden center and landscape grounds, extensive landscape grounds. Really very nice. I think I don't have any pictures here, but they did something really neat. They have these planters. They're like on these pedestals, and they're like they call them fern walls. Basically, they're like big concrete blocks, and in the middle of them, they plant ferns that can do well in an alkaline environment. It's kind of cool. Another one is Norcross in Munson in Wales. Not too far, kind of local. Go all the way down Munson Turnpike and you'll be there. This was a large, extensive grounds. Arthur Norcross bought it and started developing it and putting in natural gardens. So he started with a natural environment and built these natural looking artificial environments. I mean, it's really neat. In one place, there's a little sandy kettle hole pond, just like you might see at the Cape, with all of that Cape vegetation that we don't have there. The first time I went there, I was like, wondering how in the world did this get here? Well, it turns out he made it. So they have these natural, really natural looking landscapes and gardens that he created. He created a variety of different kinds of vegetation communities, incorporated a lot of ferns, but not just ferns, but it's very, very nice. Everything's labeled. They have really neat stuff. A beautiful place to go. Another place nearby is the Hitchcock Center. So they just opened their new building a few years ago. It's like a green building, and it's on the Hampshire College campus. And they decided to utilize a lot of ferns in their foundation plan. It's kind of neat, and they had some unusual ones. Beach ferns and Christmas fern. I think that's a Brown's Holly fern, which is related to Christmas fern. And a few others. It's very nice. So it's a nice place to go. Look around the outside and go in and see the exhibits and things. Another interesting place is this fernery. It's in Lennox. It's at Pleasant Valley, and it's a Mass Audubon facility, and it's really another one of these natural landscapes where there were native ferns in place, and some ferns, additional ferns have been planted. They're all labeled. It's very nice. It's just part of it's a large piece of land, and the fernery is a relatively small part of it. A few of the ones that are there. Here's a maidenhair fern you have out here in the garden. This is a Green Mountain maidenhair, different kind. This is a bulbous fern. And there's a few others. It's woodsy and native and natural looking. And everything's labeled. And there's some interesting native ferns that have been planted in there. It's very nice. This was done by a guy named Joe Stroud, who used to run the Berkshire Botanical Garden that we saw a picture of those photos. And then the really neat place, if you ever get up to north central Vermont, just above Waterbury in Morrisville or Morristown, is Katy Falls Botanical Garden. It used to be Katy Falls Nursery, but Don Lila retired I guess a couple of years ago. And now it's just a botanical garden. They don't sell plants anymore, but he specialized in ferns and really neat cultivars of like conifers, like weeping larches and spruces and pines and prostrate ones. So he specializes in them, and he loves ferns. So he's got all of the really uncommon ones that I've never seen in the native environment, but he's got it. And it's a beautiful place. So that's his house in the background. And here's cinnamon fern right there, right near the entrance. Extensive gardens, well-maintained walkways, different varieties of habitats, and ferns are always prominent. There's that Japanese painted fern and some maidenhair fern, probably different varieties, got several varieties of it. Lots of stone walls, ferns everywhere. Cute little alkaline ones. Yeah. More and more of them. A lot of these big mega ferns are like these. They're a variety, they be cultivated, they're called sun maidens, and they do well in the sun. I've got them at home, they're like bushes, right in the sun, no shade at all. That's one of his conifers that he cultivated. But it's just a gorgeous place. You can easily spend 2 or 3 hours in that thing in there. Gorgeous specimens that he's planted and maintained, not just ferns, not just trees, all kinds of native and not native, but suited to the environment, plants from all over. Gorgeous stuff. And one of the things that he does is he's created these tufa gardens. So tufa is a kind of limestone. It occurs naturally in some places as lakes evaporate and these calcium limestone deposits appear. But he creates them, and it's something that people do to create alkaline conditions for plants that like that kind of soil. You can mix Portland cement with perlite and peat moss and create this permeable alkaline. It's like cement, you form it into various shapes. So you can see in the background, these things, they're made out of this tufa, and some of these rocks are made out of it too. And it's kind of like a miniature rock garden, almost like bonsai. It's just gorgeous. More of these gardens with the sun maidens. Ladies' slippers. More tufa. Beautiful, beautiful places. This is one of those green mountain maidenhairs, native to Vermont, rather uncommon. Sun maidens. That's a Brown's hollow fern, it's related to Christmas fern. Have it in the high places in the Berkshires and a couple of places. We just went up to Vermont to see it yesterday. This is part of this garden that has wetlands in it. Does a lot with sculptures, metal and stone sculptures. Ferns always are prominent in the landscape. One of this beautiful weeping, I don't know what it is, but it's pretty. Another wall there, another sculpture. I like this one. It's got really common marginal wood fern growing right in a wall where you'd expect it, even around here in an old foundation or stone wall. So that's it for the visual tour. And if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them. And then we can go out and look at some ferns. Anything? Let's save your questions for outside.
I have a question.
Sure.
The wall, I missed the beginning. The wall ferns have rhizomes.
Pretty much, yes. And ferns have a kind of a weird way of reproducing. They